There are questions about how this debt's going to be dealt with, and the Europeans have a clear calendar, a clear plan as to how they want to move forward. There are questions about economics, but there are also political questions in the sense this is something new, and they're dealing with it. So our core view remains the way it has been for a while, which is the Europeans will figure it out. They'll get through the debt crisis, and they'll get to the other side being fully committed to the euro and the eurozone.
That's right. You said the European leaders will come to some solution to this issue. Do you think that might include a Greek default?
You know, you have to let the European leaders decide what's best for them and what's best for a successful long-term euro and a long-term eurozone. One thing I will say is they're very cognizant of the fact that they're all in it together.
We still have Italy and Spain banning short selling on financial shares, one of the top stories this morning. You know, we heard from PIMCO's co-CEO, Al Arian, talking about this could be progressing into a banking crisis. Do you see remnants of that?
The European banks are like any other banks. They own government securities. There are banks all over the world who take deposits. Sometimes they are put in place into government securities. So you can't blame them for carrying government bonds and European government bonds. And the issue is really to us more about what's going to happen to sovereign debt rather than an issue about the banks. I understand they're interrelated. But having said that, to the extent you have comfort that the eurozone will figure out its sovereign debt crisis, that should concern us less about the banks.
Yes, some are calling a Greek default similar to when Lehman's went under. Do you think these fears are overblown on the markets?
I think the questions of Lehman or Greek similarities, I think we need to sort of step back and say that they're fundamentally different situations. One was a financial services company, and the other is a sovereign, and it's part of the eurozone, which means that it's part of a group of countries that care about its future and care about Greece, care about euro. I will come back to say I think this feels fundamentally different than 2008.
Let's talk about your capital ratios, because recently we heard from Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan. He was talking about these new Basel rules to increase a bank's holding of capital. He said it was un-American. Citigroup being the third largest American bank. Do you feel the same way that Mr. Dimon does?
Let me tell you what I feel very strongly about. I feel very strongly about the fact that we all benefit by the soundness of the financial system and the safety of the financial system, and it is our responsibility, each of us as a bank, to contribute to that. And part of that is capital requirements, and we completely understand that that is one tool, and we ought to abide by that and live by that. But we've come a very long way. We've been pro-reform all the way along, and the one thing we would continue to call for is a well-calibrated, level playing field system that promotes financial safety.
Does this remind you of what happened in 2008 with Lehman's collapse? Does it feel like 2008 all over again?
I think this is a fundamentally different time than 2008. I mean, if you think about where we are, look at the Asian banking system. It's in very good shape. The Latin American banks are in very good shape. The American banks have done a great job in recapitalizing themselves, and they're very strong, whether it's in capital. But to us, this feels fundamentally different than 2008.
What's the future like for the U.S.? You know, we talked about the sovereign debt issues in Europe. Do you think we might head back into recession in the U.S. if, let's say, Greece does default and we have a cascade?
As I look at the U.S., I think we're quite realistic. We're quite realistic about the fact that the U.S. may not grow as fast as we'd like it to grow. Unemployment may be a little bit higher than we'd all like it to be at. I do think creating jobs is the #1 objective for the economy, but I'm also very confident that we'll get through this.